follow up to the video, the content I was making this morning, referring to, let's see if this security guard is gonna let me rock out. If I'm gonna have another useless, stupid ass problem, this is that's want in Custom, California. What's up, amigo? Good, good. See, I'm making a video right here. Any security you met in California has to be cooler than shit or meaner than the devil. He's a cooler type right there.
That was
You know, in line though too, man. Oh, this is a cool dude right there. So what I was saying is, so I was actually pointing out the significance of the word logos in the Holy Bible, and that being the word. And if you appreciate that, one of the most, like, I think that we are all simply captivated and mesmerized by phone technology, both computer but also in terms of communicating our position and our in our digital information and whatnot, up to including our likeness and the sound of our voice and our financial information and things like that, as it works in our favor. But if you appreciate, all things are exactly balanced. So the internet apparatus, some people, like, I get different when people check out this channel, they're like, man, is this dude talking crazy talk? But what I'm gonna get to is that according to the Bible itself, let me take it back a step, just to be more sturdy, but I'm gonna try to reach back to those points I'm making. What I'm saying is that if you're able to tie the actual, so in this life we actually get mocked, dismissed, and punished, sometimes deleted, for our very strong suits and propensities. Similar to, like, if you can remember if you've ever seen some of the, like, a lot of people, like where I'm at right now, there's some cool ass, I'm not gonna blast it because that's gonna be blatant, like where I'm located, but there's an entire wall of about I'd say about maybe about over almost 300 yards, probably about 200 yards of beautiful mural. And it has all kinds of X-Men figures. And actually, fuck it. I'm gonna make no, I actually had a premonition not to do that. So on this side here, I have nothing but action figures. I have some badass. He looks like a motorcycle rider with a with some kind of like mask on him, but he got a backpack. Then I have like Megatron. Then I have a female with like a green face. Then I have Jean Grey. No, is that not Jean Grey? Who's the chick from X-Men with the, not Jean Grey, but the other female from X-Men with the yellow? You got her. Then you got Cyclops. Then you got Magneto, but it looks a little bit more robotic. It's not actually the coolest Magneto I ever seen. Then you got another like rare X-Men that she looks kind of like Nightcrawler, but a female version with the white dress. You got Storm. Storm is badass chick. I grew up in the 90s waiting for X-Men to come on in the morning, and I knew that Storm was no damn pushover. If you had to really actually bet me in the 90s, I grew up in the 90s. I loved me X-Men. X-Men was one of my favorite shit, up to and next to the Ninja Turtles. Damn near cooler than the Ninja Turtles because I think they had more content and more magazines. But I knew that if it came push to shove, I'll say this to the current day, if it came push to shove as far as superheroes and characters from popular media and X-Men itself against X-Men itself, I don't think nobody got smoked with Storm. I used to think that as a kid. I'm like, yeah, she's a female character. I didn't identify with female characters as a child, but I knew that Storm would flip the damn script. She'll go from sunshine to hurricane on you like that, and you'd be in a lot of trouble kind of contending with the weather. Then you have Jean Grey. Now this chick of the whole mural here, the one that has the most attention to detail is Jean Grey and her Rumpelstiltskin. She's not necessarily tall on stilts, but she still got a rump without the stiltskin. Then you have another character. I'm not sure what that character's name is. Then you have like a female. It looks like a female Wolverine. You got a couple more. So you got these different mutants. Then on the left side of the wall, you have Dragon Ball Z characters. But the reason I mention that is because in this life, we actually get punished and taxed for our actual strong suit. So actually, somebody might show up on this channel and they'll be like, "Hey man, why you're talking about all this different stuff to what objective?" Well, you actually have to hear me out to get to the objective, because that's one thing. It's like I'm doing the best I can to upload years of lived experience, years of not years as though because I don't subscribe to linear time, but a large volume of lived experience, a large volume of studying, and I'm doing it in good faith to do the best that I can to be of value. And the most it would take, but that covers a lot of ground in terms of learning and living and ideas, that even that if you appreciate how long it would take to come to those ideas, to yet take, because I'm now in a little bit of decent health, like I'll get down right now to prove my point, right? So right now, I'm just gonna bust out some push-ups, right? All right, so I'm busting out some push-ups right there, right? And that's not to flex. I can't. I'm not yet quite. Actually, I probably could post some of the things that I do in fitness in terms of like calisthenics and body weight and stuff. But that's not the purpose of this channel in itself. But just to say that at my legal designated age, I don't say my age out my mouth, because if you say that, you think like that. If you think that, you become like that. So I don't ascribe to a linear. You're actually in this life, you actually don't have a personality in itself. You're handed and meted your personality by the people in your life, for better and worse. And some of our contention with our upbringing, like when people feel like they've been done wrong and abused and things like that, that's true. That's also part of a profit scheme and model of modern medicine. That's part of the modern current caste designating and scheduling of humans that has a lot of financial implications, and also just the racket at times of mental health. And if you appreciate mental health as being one of the chief progenitors of that and grandfathers of that is Sigmund Freud, he was actually a lot akin to a panderer, which would call like a pimp in the past. And a lot of his clientele were well-to-do women. And if back then you didn't have access to like entertainment and media and communication, so you could be stifled and lonely so much that your behavior would be out of the ordinary, and you couldn't hide that. And they'd call that neurotic before they had some of his sophisticated mental health diagnosis. And I'm not saying that he was all about bullshit, but he was actually about making money and pandering. And also he may have appropriated some of his insights from more sophisticated people, like say gypsy people in Europe, because if you appreciate at that time in the 1800s in Europe and America, you couldn't say anything outside of what the church would allow you to say. You couldn't read something, you couldn't even think a thought that was different than the church. So if he was inspired by like hypnotists, that would be then and now reminiscent of like new age type stuff that wouldn't have been tolerated by anyone in the circles or vicinities of churches. That would be more so like your outcast, bohemian, gypsy type people. And they for a long time, the gypsy people actually emanate from India. They come from southern India. They're akin to, and they're a form in line of the lower rank caste of India, the Sudras. And when you have people deprived, a lot of times there's blessings that come with deprivation. Like if you appreciate the United States, American African majority people in the last 400 years have had some of the hardest oppression and trauma and plight of any human ethnicity to live on the earth. Yet a lot of we've been the most influential, and both in terms of labor output, military output, culture output, music, art, science, anything you can think of has been blessed by and largely led by and championed by the American African majority people. If you look into it. But that's an example of how, as you close one door, you open another. So similarly, the gypsy people of southern India, the Sudra class, as they proliferated through India and through Europe and other parts of the world, they've been ostracized, marginalized, outed, and they've had to figure out life the hard way. But with that comes also graces for dealing with people and also getting reads on people. And I would imagine that's where Freud got some of his real actual insights, because hypnotism is not fake to my taste. I was actually at Detox last winter, and I had a really cool friend there that he just had cool things to say all the time. And he was talking about hypnotism. He's like, yeah, it's real, man. You want to show me? He did this. He asked me a couple questions. He's like, hey, what's your name? I said my name. He touched me. He said, hi, nice. When he did that, it opened a channel in my mind. It has to do with your identity. So like a lot of your mind, right? Like a lot of times when people first take their first hit of a spliff when they're young, it blows them out of this world. But it's not just that the ganja was that potent, but it changed their frame of identity, their perception of self. It opened, but in a good way. Like it opened your mind, like, holy shit, when I like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but sometimes I just like peanut butter. If I take a glob of peanut butter and eat it, do I actually look as stupid as I think I do? Because you can't actually swallow peanut butter. You'll have a thought like that when you're this is opening your mind, but hypnotism can actually open your mind more than a spliff. I think if you actually came across someone that knows what they're doing, in less than 30 seconds, they can open your mind, and that is a channel of your awareness that you're not in the habit of using, more so than actually intoxicants. And then you're sober that whole time, so your mind's yet as potent as ever while being open. So that's it. So that kind of thing is really real, and that's actually where Freud started. All this thing to do about mental health, about mental diagnosis, it actually comes from hypnotism. And if you actually experience real hypnotism, it's actually that deep. But he looked into it, and then he codified, and he patented and trademarked a lot of those insights and published them and taught them. So I'm not saying that he's worthless. But I was wanting to say something about what to do with mental health about that. But I'm saying I don't but I think that I don't subscribe to age. So your personality is handed to you because people give you a sense of yourself. You actually don't have an experience of being a person without that coming off of other people. For you to have an idea of being a man or woman, people have to treat you like a man or woman. You actually, in this life, you've never seen your face without without the reflection of a smartphone or a mirror. So you actually never looked at your face directly unless you met Leatherface. So you've actually seen more of your friends than they've seen of themselves, and they've seen more of you than you've seen of yourself. That's why sometimes people in your life know you better than you, because they've experienced more of you. All the things you say are experienced by them. Sometimes you do some cool shit for someone, and then like a day later, they, hey man, I remember saw that shit you did, man. Here goes something for you. You're like, fuck, man, I forgot I did that. Because people actually are impacted by your actions more than you remember doing them. But similarly, if you do something wrong, you forgot about that shit. Somebody come and clock you like, hey man, what's up with that bullshit? Like if you remember, Menace to Society is a good example. So he was out the park macking on a chick. He got her pregnant, and then he actually was cowardice about. He was actually a straight up coward. That's some cowardly shit. In that movie, the way that they shot the clerk at the beginning of the movie, that was cowardly shit. And what he did when he got that woman pregnant was also cowardly shit. And then when her actual cousin was a stand-up dude, he's fixing his car, his Dayton's and shit that he attracted her with. He's like, hey man, what's up with Eilena? He's like, hey, I don't think you know me, man. But he actually didn't know what the hell he had on his hands because he had did some shit. But what he did meant more to that woman and her people than he remembered doing that shit. So your personality comes from other people, and so sometimes when things aren't working for people, like when your social life's not working, your professional life, you would think that you've been traumatized, which all of us in America are traumatized because we're in a bloody money game, and it's traumatizing at all levels, and it's zero sum, dog eat dog, winner take all type of thing. And even if you win, you still have your people and them undermine you too. So there's no real true winners in something that corrupt. But but still too, you may have actually really had formative experiences with people that did injury to your being coming into your true voice. So this channel itself is about finding your vocation, your voice, whatever that is, even if that had nothing to do with talking. And that's the bigger part of what real trauma does, is that it makes you timid and afraid, or maybe even too much of proud around your voice to actually sound congruent like yourself. So if you don't have your voice, you can't interface as yourself, you can't relate to other people as you are. You may be able to front, you may be able to tone it down, but you can't actually have a genuine experience of being yourself and being perceived as yourself, and thereby experiencing other people as themselves without your true voice. And that's what real trauma does. But similarly, when that's also the way that your personality is handed to you. So your personality, but then similar, the government, they try to hand you your sense of age. I'm not saying that true development is not real, but what I'm saying is that a linear, like two people, for example, I just busted that shit out over there on this camera, right? But most people, according to my government stature of majority as it's designated, at my particular age, had not managed their health and diet to be able to bust that out like that. Even I was walking past some law enforcement, they were giving somebody some smoke out their car. I was minding my business, and I do push-ups, and the law enforcement officers on the next block like shaking out, like say, damn man, how many did you do? Man, I can't do that shit. So I'm saying is that so two people who are the same age, they may not be of the same health or capacity or even experience. So what's more significant than your numeral age is the cycle you're within, because we do go through cycles. You have like infancy, toddler, child, adolescent, teenager, young adult, seasoned adult, mature adult, middle age, elderly, gray. So the cycles are more significant but I'm saying on a deeper level, I'm extrapolating that to the universe. But the reason I'm saying all this is that we get punished in this life for our real strengths. And if you're able to, what I'm saying is that for me to land some of these ideas, but then also be healthy enough and have the standpoint to do that, that took a lot of living, loving, suffering, and a lot of times going without to do that, but also being strong through that to present them now. But a lot of people wouldn't afford me enough of 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours to let me get off what I'm trying to say, but they'll watch a stupid ass movie like Menace to Society. For no, all due respect if you like that movie, but to my taste it's stupid. If you want, because it's showing us how to victimize ourselves without a real actual true storyline. You'll watch a fake fictitious concocted movie script for 2 hours to waste your time like that, but you won't let somebody get off an actual congruent fact that they've looked into and lived through. But to each their own. But what I'm saying is that as you read so to be able to bring different ideas together that don't seem related, that's actually one of the highest points of learning. One of the highest. So a lot of people would say degree, right? So when you say a degree, like you go to the university and you have your this and that degree, that's bastardized and appropriated from some of the deeper and older fraternal orders, which are guilds. A better word than a fraternity or like that secret stuff like that. A better word than that is a guild. So what would be one? I'm just gonna keep it funky. This is not to betray classified information. So you would say Masonic, this and that, right? So everybody has imagination of what Masonry is about, right? I don't know or care, but you can also imagine that Masonry is like the trades, and trades have guilds. So a better way to say than Masonry would be a guild. So a lot of things exist like in terms of, damn, I forgot where I was going with that. So a lot of things exist. A lot of things exist like a guild like that, right? But within a lot of people, layman people like myself that aren't privy to that and could care less, you know that there's different degrees of that thing. But what those degrees actually refer to is the degrees of a circle. So I'm saying a circle is very, as understanding goes. I'm not saying that stuff's not real and that they don't also know about a lot of stuff, even things that we don't. For example, these buildings that are up here, right? These buildings will stand for 20 years like that, but actually to make a building stand, you have to have the ground leveled like with a plumb line. Then also where buildings are, there's some things that are not known in modern the modern lexicon of education, such as there's things like called ley lines. So like in city planning, this has been known for at least hundreds of years. Wherever a city would be located, why they put the capital there, the way the buildings are built, the angles they face as it correlates to the local solar system, the moon, the local planets, the sun, and broader, then to how that corresponds with the earth. Some of those principles were known to the Egyptians, which is some of the profundity of the pyramids. If you know how the pyramids are built, that's actually more sophisticated engineering than we have now what the pyramids did. But some of that knowledge was not all deleted the way we're taught it was. Teaching us that it was deleted is what the deletion is. But real people, real killers, real go-getters, they're not going to throw anything worthwhile. So the real understanding of the principles of geometry and mathematics and science, whatnot, that we're aware of are not all of what's known. And some of what's known are within some of these gilded orders, blah, blah, blah. But all I'm saying is that upon them, they have different degrees of rank, as I understood by the testimony of Grand Sheikh Tashri Bey, who appears on YouTube. And they'll have like different degrees that refer to numbers, this degree. The highest, actually some of the highest degrees, it's appreciated, can't be achieved by a mortal, and it's not known if a mortal has ever attained them in one life. And if they did, they'd have to be a protege and very talented to reach those higher degrees, because even if you were just a straight shooter and you did not fuck up your whole life, you couldn't get to those higher degrees of understanding, because they're actually spiritual at that point, and they take a lot of deep experience and sophisticated knacks and talent. If a person were born with some of those talents, they'd exactly be the type of person marginalized and designated as mentally ill in the modern society, which mental illness is a euphemism coined from former witch hunters. And so in other cultures, when people betray signs of what could be appreciated as anxiety or having profound thoughts, they're exactly designated and sometimes isolated and trained to be things like medicine men and shaman, and actually treated with respect. So too people with other orientations and other cultures, like in Native American, you have like two-spirit and things like that. I actually met a living two-spirit here I'm at, because she appreciably has a different ear. Her ears look completely different, her eyes look different, her thumbs look different. She also was born, her mother was pregnant with fraternal twins. The fraternal twin didn't make it, and according to her own experience and the way that her genetics appeared to doctors, that actual fraternal twin was absorbed into her, because she has 3 chromosomes. Most males are XY chromosome, most females are XX chromosome. This woman is an XXY chromosome, which actually is a known condition, a higher order medical condition that's not known to the public as a female. The actual male counterpart of that would be something called Klinefelter syndrome. So I'm not sure what you call. So she actually herself, she may have similar to Klinefelter syndrome, but she's not very tall. But um, XYY chromosome, that might be like an actual a Bane type guy, like a ultra. You would call that. You have alpha male, beta male. A gamma male would be like a very intelligent person. A delta male would be like someone that sticks by the rules. A sigma male would be like a Clint Eastwood type, a leader but also a loner. Then you have a zeta male, that's like an antisocial, formidable, could be a criminal type, or even a legitimate person that's very formidable. That would be like an XYY chromosome. But then you also have XXY. This woman presented as and appeared as female, but she could be considered a little bit hermaphroditic. And she said that some of her actual her private regions do not appear as they do for normal people, and that they're still that of a female, but they don't appear for normal people. And that's part of that actual combination of chromosome. But for men, but she's actually a female and presents herself as a female, but she has a non-traditional orientation for a female. Then for a man, sometimes you'll have a man that's very tall, but they have long legs and a small torso, and they're inordinately tall and a little bit of a feminine. That's something called Klinefelter syndrome, and that's also XXY, where you have a unique specimen that's both at once male and female in genetic terms. But in Native American culture, they would appreciate something called a two-spirit, which would be, according to Arthur Avalon, when in the footnotes in India, some of the understandings of India in Ayurvedic medicine is that when a man and a woman come together, what's represented by the red dot on a woman's forehead is the red bindi dot. That's auspicious blessing, but it also is it's a symbol. It symbolizes the creative potence in a woman's body, that is the menses. And then bindu would be the male version of that is the color white, and it represents the male contribution. When a male and female come together, according to Arthur Avalon, you have a contribution of the female in the form of menses, and you have the contribution of the male in terms of what the male provides in the encounter. Then when those two interact, you have some sacred. You have, according to another YouTuber named Mel. He was from Gold Ray Twin Flames channel. He passed away during the COVID period, but he talked about the experience of twin flames. And if you've ever fallen in love in a strange way, he may have you look into something. But he said that with a male and female who have a deep, near about spiritual chemistry, reciprocity come together, their bodies produce something called OJAZ. Your body, and not only your body, but all animals, insects, plants, they have different secretions and properties that can be used as medicine, as elixirs. That's like very potent, refined juices and/or things to be ingested that are in themselves not only a medicine, but they're like a boon to the body, and they can produce outcomes that are not normal or even achievable by regular medicine or true living. And both and those different substances and properties that can be found in animals, humans, plants, minerals, and even metals. They're called entheogens properly, even if they're existing as drugs, and they're usually part of an actual cultural lineage. And there's different protocols, but also ethics and circumstances and timetables when and how they can be procured ethically, sourced ethically, prepared, maybe sold or procured and ingested ethically, and then moved on past ethically in an actual viable culture and framework. I would imagine Western terms we could probably do some of that, but there's a very likelihood that's powerful stuff, both in terms of food, medicine, and boons, and also poisons and weapons. But there are ethical dilemmas. Sometimes you can have an ethical dilemma without being wrong. I was telling someone yesterday about that. He's like, how can you have an ethical dilemma without being wrong? I was like, imagine you were at a dock, right? He's from the Northern California area. I was like, imagine you were sitting by the dock of the bay like Otis Redding, and you're there, and a boy and a girl fall into the water at the same time. and they're both adolescent. They weigh about 100, 130 to 150 pounds. You're only strong enough as a man while swimming to save one of them. Do you save the boy or the girl? He's like, well, that's easy. I'll save the girl because she's more valuable to the species. Okay, what if they were twins? Oh, well, I'd say so he was caught with that one. Is that how would you know which one to save if it's two female twins that just felt like that? What I told him is that the best I can do is you would go with your instinct on that because that's how you would know what to do. But that's an actual ethical dilemma without having done wrong. Something went wrong for them to fall in the water, but you didn't do wrong to be presented with the ethical dilemma. Which one do I save? But also with things like entheogens and food. So you have, it's actually not a coincidence that you have the Food and Drug Administration, because food and drugs are both substances. And so entheogens are what affect the mind and the sense of self and the sense of awareness of space and time. But there are and also plants, animals, and humans and plants, animals, and humans can also be used for clothing too. That's part of it, because food doesn't just stop with ingesting; it also covers the body. So that's a function of food, like as in animal hides, and also like fashioning living accommodations when in nature. And that's actually, I think that clothes are better like that. Now we don't have to slay animals for our clothing, but I think clothes have a lot more swag when you share them in goodwill and when they've been given to you as a blessing. Like a lot of people say Timberlands ain't hitting for nothing unless they're given to you. I actually have some Timberlands here, and they were given to me as a blessing. This Holy Bible was given to me as a blessing. Some things are more of swag when they were given to you as a blessing, but that's actually that's like urban culture, like from the East Coast, is that Timberlands have to be blessed to you. These were blessed to me by a female staff at a shelter, but they're still blessed to me, and they're a lot of value because I've got a lot of miles with them, and there's some sturdy. I didn't even know they were Timberlands at first, but there's some sturdy boots that I had for a few months, and I put a lot of miles on them, and they did me well in the harsh Minnesota winter and abroad. But so what I'm saying is that with entheogens, there can be ethical considerations that are very real and that are very significant. But what I'm saying is that we get punished for our strong suits, and in these different orders, like these different guilds that have privy knowledge of old and of present. Any learning, anyhow, the highest demonstration of learning and the highest form of learning and understanding is clarity of sight. That is 360 degrees, a circle, complete knowledge. That's what a university means. It means complete knowledge of the universe. 360 degrees, the highest attainment. That may not be attainable by a human being other than and outside of clear vision, clarity. There's an orator named Osho, and he used to say profound stuff off the cuff. These journalists would come and stick questions to him, and he would enlighten them and confound them and stump them. And he would talk to well-to-do people like in the 70s and 80s. These would be like doctors and lawyers, and they'd come around him just to do menial tasks like clean the bathroom and stuff like that, how cold he was. But he's like, man, I just want to let you know, when I'm talking to you jackasses, I'm just saying whatever comes into my mind, but it's actually just from looking at your asses like that. That's where I come up with this shit. But what he's saying is that it's the clarity of thought, it's the clarity of sight that actually gives you the deep thoughts. But the way that you achieve clarity, because things can confound you. You can have an ethical dilemma, and you can have things that seem different, worlds apart, that contradict each other. How do you have clear vision? The mark of an enlightened and wise person is that you can hold two different ideas at the same time. You can appreciate Islam and Christianity at once without being offended by either and without offending other, and appreciating what value they may have individually and or together for you there and your life there, as you're free to choose, and also allow others to live and let live. That's called Hegelian dialectics, when you can juxtapose. That means put things together that are very seemingly different. When you can see I'm right now, there's a fire hydrant here and there's a trolley coming by. There's a fire hydrant right here and there's a mural behind it. They don't seem to have anything to do with each other. When you can form a connection between the fire hydrant and the mural and that well-to-do hotel over there, now you're really getting onto insight, because all things in life are connected, but they don't seem to be. When you can make connections between what doesn't seem to be, that's a real connection you just formed in terms of insight and a connection in your mind. You now see clearer now like that. So if you are making statements like that, or even content like this, where you can draw different things together and make analogies and parallels and references to things that don't seem together, that's actually the highest attainment and expression of learning. But that's what will actually have you get run up a pole and have your ass explaining yourself to a shrink if you're that foolish to answer them honestly. Just like government services, you have to tell someone that went to school to be a shrink exactly what they got to hear to get on past their ass. That's how you do that. Because if you go around being honest around someone dishonest, like a cop, like a shrink, like anyone that's paid to not have your best interest, you're gonna hurt yourself and potentially who you could have helped by being honest with someone dishonest. So it doesn't serve one to be honest with dishonest. It serves to be short and curt, if not silent, with people who are dishonest. Um, but with that, this channel, this is about Bible study, and I was getting on to talk about the planets and this and that, and different things that don't seem to have anything to do with the Bible. But I'm saying that's, if you allow me the runway, I'm intending to bring it back to the Bible. But one thing I wanted to go through it point for point, and this is the NIV version, 2023, and I'm saying that it states in here a few things in the preface that I wanted to go over, if I can do so without glossing, but also be timely. It says here, on the first paragraph of the preface to the NIV, Holy Bible NIV 2023 published edition, we believe that the Bible contains the divine answer to the deepest needs of humanity, sheds unique light on our path in a dark world, and sets forth the way to our eternal well-being. Out of these deep convictions, we have sought to recreate as far as possible the experience of the original audience, blending transparency to the original text with accessibility for millions of English speakers around the world. We have prioritized accuracy, clarity, and literary quality with the goal of creating translation suitable for public and private reading, evangelism, teaching, preaching, memorizing, and liturgical use. We have also sought to preserve a measure of continuity with the long tradition of translating scriptures into English. The complete NIV Bible was first published in 1978. It was a completely new translation made by over 100 scholars working directly from the best available Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek texts. The translators came from the United States, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, giving the translation an international scope. They were from many denominations, churches, including Anglican, Assemblies of God, Baptist Brethren, Christian Reformed, Church of Christ, Evangelical Covenant, Evangelical Free, Lutheran, Mennonite, Methodist, Nazarene, Presbyterian, Wesleyan, and others. The breadth of denominational and theological perspective helped to safeguard the translation from sectarian bias. For these reasons, and by the grace of God, the NIV has gained a widespread readership in all parts of the English-speaking world. The work of translating the Bible is never finished. As good as they are, English translations must be regularly updated so that they will continue to communicate accurately the meaning of God's word. Updates are needed in order to reflect the latest developments in our understanding of the biblical world and its languages, and to keep pace with the changes in English use. Now that is where I go. So I'm saying that this is a Bible study of the Bible, and I'm intending to extrapolate insight of going through the Bible and how that has to do with where we're living at now, especially as we're inundated with technology and different lifestyles and different mores and standards and customs and even laws than were at play even in 1978, and especially when the Bible was written. So I'm saying, to that vein, the beginning of something important that's written is called the thesis. They've actually deleted the thesis to this Bible because they said that they've deleted certain things. The old Bibles, as recently as like 15 or 20 years ago, it used to say, in the beginning was the word was with God, and God was the word, and God created the heavens and the earth. That first part about the word is actually more significant than the heavens and the earth, because what is God in the how could you define God in the most simple of terms? To me, I've leveled some psalm names for God on here. You have Jehovah Jireh, my provider; Jehovah Nisi, my banner, that which I represent. Not that you can represent God, but you can be submitted to God. Jehovah Jireh, my provider; Jehovah Sham, my peace; Jehovah Ra, I forget what Jehovah Ra means; Jehovah Israel, the God of Israel; Jesus Christ; Allah; Emmanuel, God with us; Kwan Anan is referred to in Kwan Anan is referred to in Japan. Chidgana of Bharata, that is India. Then, interestingly, according to Dr. Wesley Muhammad, a minister of the Nation of Islam, and one of the most thoroughgoing scholars the most thoroughgoing scholars I've come across is Dr. Wesley Muhammad, Granshi Tashriq Bey, Sir John Woodruff, and as far as young people, on actual young scholars now that are online. You have Morris Brooklyn. I've actually met him on the phone, and I reference him a lot, and I borrow the word entheogen from him. And he has actually he had a PDF that you can buy to learn about entheogens. It has things like actually over the counter things that you can find in your pantry that actually has some of the same, if not more potent effects as what are thought to be drugs or thought to be entheogens that are not known to general knowledge, such as things like vanilla, nutmeg, a lot of basic things that if you knew what you're doing can really impact a person, especially the way they're dosed and prepared over time. But he's the most thoroughgoing scholar I've met of my not only or the necessarily most thoroughgoing content creator in terms of prolific talent, although he's prolifically talented as an orator, but also as a scholar, a really heavy, thoroughgoing scholar. Dr. Wesley Muhammad, he actually he I come from my father comes from the country of Namibia, and my father comes from two people, the Herero people and the Ovamo people. The Herero people, together with the Nama people, suffered one of the first genocide orders of the 20th century by the very same cadre and ranks and either father or grandfathers of the very Nazi regime. Because all things have a precedent before them. Even the Nazi atrocity had a precedent before, no less. Actually, German Southwest Africa, now known as Namibia. They had been fighting the Herero over the Herero were a cattle raising people very similar to the Native Americans, and they're also their sense of manliness and the power structure and the organization of social relationships was along the cattle. And then here go the German forces come to America and then also slake their hunger on the cattle. But if you meet, I don't mean to be arbitrary with this, but people of European descent and culture and African descent and culture, they have a little bit different of appetites and customs around food. I appreciate if you a lot of people from Europe, my family and people I've grown up around, they have sometimes ferocious appetite. Just think about it. Just ask yourself, the last time you went through like a restaurant district in any city, right? A real restaurant district. Did you see more European patrons or people of other ethnicities? I don't mean to be arbitrary with that, but just as a culture and or ethnicity, Europeans patronize restaurants differently than people of African descent. So you can appreciate they may have been approaching the cattle differently. I'm not saying they were necessarily ripping off the Herero of their cattle necessarily all the time, but they would have had different aesthetics and values and understanding of what the cattle mean. I was listening to some Native American people during the Standing Rock protests in 2016, and at that time, America was wanting, the oil companies, they were wanting to put a pipeline under a certain river, water source in North and South Dakota through like Minnesota into Illinois. And the Native American anticipated that that would corrupt their water source, and it actually did. But before they made it, they had a large standoff, and it was one of the largest mobilization of Native Americans of different nations, which those nations don't always get along historically. But they put their differences aside, and they came in solidarity to stand up to offending of the water sources. When that happened, later, that was during when President Trump was president-elect his first time before he got into office, but he was president-elect. They were trying to fight that before he got into office because they thought that he would side. I think they thought he would side with the oil pipelines, which he did, and it got railroaded through, which it did, and it spilled, which they thought it would. But when they were interviewing those Native Americans, they had a couple excerpts with the elders that were available online, and normally the Native American people, they protect their traditions and understandings and cherish them because traditionally they have been appropriated, bastardized, and used against them. You can use someone's understanding against them. If you know what somebody values, you can anticipate them and you can interfere with them and impede them and sometimes block and defeat people if you know their values and because if you know someone's values, you know their decision-making prioritization, you can anticipate their movements. So Native Americans have not always betrayed their own insight to their credit. But during that time, they shared some of their understanding, and these elders were they're talking about the river, and they didn't actually even explain. They were at a loss for words to how would you explain to somebody that's reared in capitalism, commercialism, consumerism, Western fiat education, the heirloom and inheritance of atrocity, colonialism, gentrification. How can you explain to them what water actually is and what it means to the land and to the people who are also the land? How can you enunciate something like that? A better statement is a question. When he asked that question like that, it really taught me that there are things about water, the earth, and animals that we don't appreciate as ordinary, ignorant civilians of Western society, even though we've been to school before. But similarly in Africa, they would have had those values around the cattle. But then when here go it is interesting too that the colonials, a lot of people, they say like the colonials were the big bad guys, but when the colonials actually got abroad to pillage and plunder, they were actually fleeing at the same time because they had ran through their own resources there. Their style of life, their entitlement, their feudal structure, and their sparing of resources and consuming of resources, it wasn't viable. I don't think that any land is not strong enough to support the people there if they're natural and ethical and congruent. But if you're hoarding surplus, if you're feasting, if you're devouring the environment, and you're not sharing equity with your countrymen, you're outdoing your countrymen and the environment, you're gonna run out of shit soon enough because everything burns, even food supplies. So the Europeans, they were fleeing for more resources, more food, more ground, more everything. Manifest Destiny is actually a fleeing, pillaging, at once fleeing and pillaging apparatus. So a refugee and a thief at the same time. A lot of people are just simple refugees, now included. But in the older version of colonialism, they're refugees and thieves, at least they're actually. But they didn't know what to do with their resources in Europe, such as they ran out of them. Then they get other places and they would have approached those resources differently than the people there who were balanced and viable over eons with that. So they came to a head, and then they got sick of fighting. So they had become Germany recently. They had been Prussia before that. And I imagine this General von Trotha, he was an experienced killer. His experience, I think, may have came in the formative journey in Prussia, but I don't know. When he got to Africa, he said, enough with all this fighting, exterminate them, all of them, man, women, and children. So they had two options. They could flee east, which would be like towards Botswana, because Namibia is above South Africa on the western flank of Africa at the sea. It's actually a lot of, like Windhoek, the capital, is a seaport. I'm sorry, Lüderitz is a seaport where my father's from, and it's a coastal country. But then but it also is lined with desert, as in the Namib Desert, as in the name of the country, Namibia. As you go east, you get to more and more of desert that's even uninhabitable for people from that region. So they would have either marched, men, women, and children, towards the inhospitable desert to perish, or they would have captured them and they would have interned them and starved them and or lynched them and or fought them to the death and not spared none, men, women, and children. That happened 1904 to 1908 against the Herero and Nama people. But in that region, the reason another awesome name for God in that region of Southwest Africa, not endemic to those people, but endemic to the Zulu people, which were the only people of Africa not conquered by colonialism. They would say the word Nkulu Nkulu. That means what we call God. And similar to man, I think that was a blessing right there, because this beautiful dog licked my hand when I uttered that name. That was actually kind of beautiful. But similar to the story of both Jesus Christ and God Almighty, who is, I can appreciate Jesus Christ as the Word of God because he's the fulfillment of the prophecy of God and his promise towards Abraham and his descendants, to bless Abraham and his descendants and the earth at large and the creatures thereon, by means of his sincerity to Abraham, but also Abraham and his line's sincerity back towards God. And it took the grace of Jesus to do all of that. So you can say that Jesus is also the Word. So what is a man? A man is his thoughts, God, his will, Holy Spirit, and what he does. But you have to do speaking and doing to do speaking and doing. So he's his thought, his word, his thought, his spirit, and his deed. That is his word. His thought, God, his spirit, Holy Spirit, and his deed, that is word. That is Jesus Christ, his word, according to the Holy Bible. That's the Judeo-Christian Holy Bible. But similarly, God himself, he didn't actually have an heir himself. God is a spirit, is an eternal being, but actually God doesn't have an image, a likeness. That would be to profane God, to limit God. By anything that can be perceived, can be understood, is limited. So if there's actually a likeness of God, God is at once mocked and limited. That is to profane God, to make an image and likeness of God. You could actually even say, by extension, if God is the Holy Trinity, and thereby Jesus is also God, at least the Word of God, the fulfillment of God, but also the third part of the Trinity, even to make an effigy of Jesus, I don't mean to be arbitrary, and with all due respect, if Jesus also is God, not the God the Father, but still God, as connected and synonymous with God, and also the way to God, the intercessor of God, even to make an effigy of Jesus would be to be profane, and that too, to present oneself as Jesus, because at different times they'd say that there have been impersonators of Jesus, but if you actually did impersonate or understand yourself as Jesus and then present yourself that way, you would be mocking, you'd be making a likeness of it, and that'd be a self-mockery. So there actually can be no image of something that's truly worshipful. The most you can do is whatever the most you can conceive to worship, but if you can conceive of something that can be worshipped without being profaned, it would have to be less than righteous, because that there's only one righteous according to the Holy Bible, and that one is not to have an image or likeness made in its vein. It's interesting. Actually, a lot of us would appreciate. I love gospel music, and I've been inspired by gospel music, but in actually some solemn faith settings, like the Nation of Islam, they actually don't have like speak. They don't have a dialogue between the audience and the service, and they actually don't even do music, because even in things like Islam, music is considered intoxicating. So music is wine, women, and song and dance. Actually, music is actually an intoxicant. And so in a strict religious order, it's interesting because you do have something like called the Sufis, which are they're a sect of Islam, and I know that they do worship like in terms of dancing and beautiful worship like that. But in strict consecrated observance, music is actually seldom to be found in that, and that's not wrong. That's actually that's actually teachable, because what that shows you is that I'm not saying that worshiping divinity through music is wrong, but I'm saying it's not endemic to the actual Eurocentric line of worship that is monotheism by way of Judaism, Judeo-Christianism, and Islam in the older sense. I'm not saying that worship at all is not part of that, but animated music that we have now, because in Europe they didn't actually have drums, and they would have like Gregorian chantings like they didn't actually have like lyrics and like, you are my almighty, you are the awesome, if I can be like my Lord. They didn't have like beautiful music like that. That comes from Africa. So I'm just pointing that out. That's also beautiful, but that's actually the African contribution, because like the Tower of Babel, when people came here from Africa, they were stripped of their names, of their language, of their culture, of their worship. What could be stripped of the mind was stripped of that. However, your people, your language, your history, your worship, your rhythm, your talent, your singing, that of your ancestors is real. Your ancestors are you. So actually, your ancestors' worship and who they are and were prior to colonialism, prior to slavery, is still about you. So African Americans, us, we have had the actual sensation, the feeling, the talent, the understanding to actually re-engineer and reconceive worship for ourselves and Eurocentric society in the second place, when they see how profound it is. So, but I'm just actually pointing out that there's a difference between Eurocentric monotheism and its worship, which is not entirely omitted of music, but not the same music as we have now in the West. But the music that we have in the West that we know as gospel, it actually, in its truest essence, it's not gospel. It didn't start at that. It was folk music. So Africa brought over folk music. Folk music was good, bad, and ugly. You can have a song about whatever you're experiencing. Similar to hip hop now. Hip hop is actually modern folk. I appreciate hip hop as modern folk, and hip hop is as redeeming, enlightening, beautiful, and as horrible, wicked, and scary as is real life, as is folk experience. So we actually have gone all the way back to folk music in hip hop, I think, because it's what we're going, and it's also the most relatable genre now. And before you had funk and soul in the 70s and things like that, the older folk, I bet you, in the time of slavery, that actually would have been the most relatable music then. Then at that time, slaves couldn't always even talk or sing in the fields, but it's appreciated that slaves can be more productive while singing. That work songs, that's appreciated the world over. If you had to run somewhere, right, like wherever I'm at, man, you gotta run your ass 4 miles, man, right now, man, and the coolest shit is gonna happen to you if you get there, and if not, the worst shit's gonna happen to you. You would do better if you had music that you like, the cadence of that. You can do better with the cadence. Your body is more formidable, so whatever your mind can conceive, your body can do, but your mind is more beautiful and stronger with music and cadence. So too is your body in the second place, because your body is your mind. But so when the slave masters appreciated that the slaves could be more productive in terms of labor while singing, and also healthier and happier, and therefore more viable for labor, then they were tolerated for it, because it's all about the almighty dollar in America, in the blood money game. But then as that happened, so too only the righteous gospel-like music were suffered, that it was allowed, tolerated of the slaves in the presence of the masters. So the folk music never went away. That was for one thing. That was for the field. That was for cool things away from Mazanim. and anybody that would run back tell that. Then in front, master than them, the folk didn't go away, but it had to be couched. That's like, as you can see, a similar thing would be like in Brazil. Right now, anybody who gets down with MMA, they likely are. So like I was saying, Africans have blessed America in so many ways, the Americas also. So right now, everybody's on that MMA shit. A fight is going to go in one and three ways. It's going to start boxing, stand up. There's a combination of punching and kicking. Then when people get frustrated with that and tired, they're going to come into clinching, really close, lazy shit, but still serious shit. Then somebody's going to go to the ground. When somebody goes onto the ground, it's going to come down to either wrestling and or jiu-jitsu. Wrestling, that you have different forms of wrestling. You have traditional, like what's taught to boys in America, collegiate wrestling, that's taught in schools. Wrestling, that's formidable. That's a martial art. That shit works. You also have Sambo, which is what Khabib of there's a country called Dagestan. I told my mom about Dagestan. My mom is a college student. She studied languages. She didn't know that country existed. It's like connected to Russia, or similar to Russia. There's a lot of great people from that area. My guitar teacher's from Slovenia. That's similar people as Russia and Dagestan. But they did something there called Sambo. That's a type of wrestling that's very formidable. I met a real life martial artist, and he was telling me that what works the best in fighting to his taste is Sambo. But then also in terms of locking, like I had this friend growing up. He was this little killer ass kid. Like he was like 3 years. He was like 2 grades younger than me and my friend. But he was a real actually life killer since a kid. Like he'll get into fights at school, and he wouldn't get in a fight if a kid was messing with him. He wouldn't mess with the kid. He would go make little flyers and invitations and pass them out to all the girls to meet at the end of the school to make sure everybody saw him hand that guy's ass to him. He would be actually organized about something like that. Then like we'd play 007. Like back in the days, everybody was on 007 at sleepovers and stuff. And it's like, man, it's like whatever you have now for like group play shoot 'em up games like Call of Duty. That's actually from Men in Black. I mean, so from 007. And before that was like Doom and Duke Nukem, that first person shooter like that. But then 007 made it more of a collaborative thing. That you can do with your friends. But the old Doom and Nukem was you and the computer. But then 007 made it collaborative. But you go to sleepovers and we don't do nothing but kill each other that whole sleepover in 007. But if you play that game like a regular person, you'd get smoked by my friend because you didn't know that it got these 2 buttons on the top of that 64 controller. It looked like an elephant, that controller. Them 2 little yellow buttons are the actual footwork where you can sidestep like that. He'll get over on everybody off the footwork. That's the deeper thing, is that all fighting in life is a matter of footwork. Whether you're boxing, wrestling, MMA, karate, Muay Thai, water fight, gunfight, bow and arrow, thumb wrestle, anything you would do, slap box, cut somebody out, tell somebody off, quit your job. The actual footwork is where the fight is really won and lost. There's a book called Footwork Wins Fights, and that's one of probably the most potent books that exists right now, is Footwork Wins Fights. Then there's another book called something about violence. It's called Mind of Violence. It actually tells you that violence is very expensive. So a lot of people that are broke like to fight, and a lot of people that are about to be broke like to fight, because when you fight, you don't understand how much energy you're releasing, but you also don't know how much damage you're doing to yourself and other. You can injure your foot. That takes how much? If you actually got injured in a fight, right? You like music, right? You might pick up an instrument right now or not. You mess up your hand, now that precludes you from being an instrumentalist your whole life, a true full-fledged instrumentalist with the full range of your hands. Or you break a limb, or you can't walk sturdy, or you hurt your back, or you have a brain injury. You can't talk. Anything that can happen in a fight. How much money is that out of? How much of your experience of life are you out of? You didn't die, but you lost a lot of value. Or you get picked up by them people because even though you're pissed off, you forgot that you're a civilian and you're still on occupied territory that's subject to the local jurisdiction and auspices. You actually are not at liberty to fight. We have a notion of more of masculinity and manhood and being able to defend ourselves than we actually have in terms of what's viable here and the laws at play, the harmonies at play. We have the notion of standing up for ourselves, getting down, standing up for our respect, chivalry, this and that. You can think like that, you can do like that, and you may or may not get away with it, but you likely won't get away with it. And then when you get discovered, you'll be incarcerated and you'll lose your actual status as a sovereign adult, because now you have a criminal record. You can't vote the same way, you can't do the same jobs, you can't bank the same way. Not that you can't, but not the same way. And also you can't protect yourself with the firearm. So that actual fight, that exchange, costs you your ability to defend yourself. That's very costly. But then that too, even if you did, say you won a fight, right? You win a fight, you get away with it, but now you got street cred. Now somebody want to see about your street cred, so you're gonna get another fight until you get caught. So fighting is really not just. I don't know anybody that's actually won in life because of fighting. The only person I can think that actually had real clout based on street fights that banked about it was like Jorge Masvidal, the MMA fighter, and but he did that as a young person. He had an MMA career. He amounted all the way to the his own belt. Him and Nate Diaz as the BMF belt, the Baddest Motherfucker belt. West Coast killer Nate Diaz versus Miami East Coast killer Jorge Masvidal. But then even after that, he got into smoke with his former training partner, a wrestler, and Kobe Covington, who's like a comedian, outspoken person, but something of a ham. And when he did so, he then later ran up on him in a restaurant, and he went to slugging him in a restaurant, and I think he had legal repercussions because that shows you that sometimes even when you get away with something, you're gonna pay for it sooner or later. So just him having the proclivity and the habit and propensity to engage in a street fight, in combat with a civilian, or at least with another fighter not in a venue that's sanctioned, on the actual literal grounds of the street, the auspices of the local city, state, and national government, you actually broke the law right there, and you weren't actually at liberty enough of a man to fight as you would want to, where you so choose, with who you so choose. You don't have that right in America. But we think we do because we're human men and we feel that way, but you actually don't. So it's very costly. But the only reason I mentioned that is because the third form of wrestling is like, but that friend I had who was like a killer like that with the footsteps, back then in the 90s, before fighting was popular, he already knew jujitsu. So jujitsu is like those little locks where like you can take somebody that weighs like 100 pounds, and if they were wrestling with a 300-pound person, they could get their knee in a little angle where that fool gotta surrender, or they're gonna break their damn knee like that. 100 pounds, if they know what to do with themselves. That's jujitsu, but that also comes from Brazil. And Brazil is also the theater of slavery, but in the Americas, but a different iteration of slavery than in North America. Because Americas had slavery, I think North, South America, and the Caribbean. I think Central America too, but I know for sure North, South, and the Caribbean. But the slavery was different there. There were different rigors, but also different leeway and blessings and wiggle room. So in Brazil, they had something called capoeira. And that's where Brazilian jiu-jitsu comes from now, and that's where MMA fighting shit comes from now. Is that the slaves, they would practice self-defense for the purpose of a revolt or insurrection and or self-defense, because men have an interest in defending themselves, whether they're subject to slavery or not. But similar to the gospel music, they would have to couch and conceal what they're doing as dancing. So they would practice fighting as dancing and capoeira, which actually fighting is always dancing, whether it's capoeira or not. Fighting is always dancing. Living is dancing. Walking is dancing. Being around other people, standing in line is dancing as of etiquette. Speaking is dancing. All things are dancing that deal with other people, but it's also love and war. So all's fair in love and war, but also love and war are also dancing. So, but they would have to conceal that. But then as capoeira, and they were formidable because that's one of the most effective fighting martial arts is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as an inheritance and heirloom of Brazilian capoeira, of the African and Brazilian African slaves there. But then in America, you had folk music is the original music. Folk music is so America's chief export, according to Dr. Umar Johnson, is culture. Culture is very bankable. You go here in America or anywhere, you go into like a well-to-do store and you're window shopping or shopping, and they got that right music on and you're about to come out your pocket. A lot of people talk about how much artists have been ripped off for their publishing rights and stuff like that. That actually doesn't tell half the story, because you actually can't account for how much money music makes. Not only because music is a lubricant. Music isn't actually truly a value in itself. It's a lubricant for socializing and understanding oneself and sharing oneself, and also in influencing oneself and others. The best way to influence others is through yourself, but also influence is power is expressed by violence, the potential of violence, or the control of life and death, which is also supplying food and medicine and taking food and medicine and implying injury. That's power. But power is possible through politics and or cooperation. That takes communication. But communication is most potent with charisma. It requires charisma and also social intelligence, emotional intelligence, EQ. The greatest the greatest facility that is be able to use EQ, emotional intelligence, is emotional intelligence quotient. My dad doesn't like the idea of intelligence quotient because that's culturally arbitrary. And so too is intelligence quotient as it's being measured. But your sophistication with feeling emotions, expressing emotions, and understanding other people's emotions and allowing them to express their emotions, which has them rock with you, that's influence. So actually, influence is pure power. If there was pure power, so pure profit is private property, that is owning real estate and or intellectually property, lesser so than real estate, because you need real estate to operate online, or you have to put art and creativity somewhere or access it from somewhere. So I would appreciate pure profit as real estate, as holding assets, but even more than assets, the land. Land is the most crucial real estate then and now. Land. You can't do nothing without land. That's private property holding. But then land is controlled and managed. It takes politics to be somewhere. You can't be somewhere even owning it without politics, because you need help to do something. Then the way that power is applied and used or forfeited is by means of success with or lack of success in influence. But America, if you look at how much music influences people, the decisions that they make, the money that they make, the styles that they imitate, the things that they purchase to get on with styles that are also about music, how much artists have been ripped off of the true value of their music. It's like if you take Michael Jackson and he had Never Neverland and then he was fighting for his publishing rights. That's not half the story about how much money he made. Because for example, back in the day, Thriller album was popping, right? When somebody's like, man, they just feel like going out tonight, man, let's see if we can go somewhere and find where that Thriller, man, where's that Thriller shit going on at, man, fuck it, let's go to the entertainment district, let's go to the red light district. Then they go and patronize all those places right there because they want to have a Thriller experience and they want to find Thriller playing somewhere. That's how much money Thriller made that you could never. So actually, Michael Jackson, as much as he killed the game, you could say he got less than peanuts for how much that music is really worth. But so America exports culture that is influenced. America has hegemony about influential social trends, social media and before social media, and like electrical, digital, radio media, television, on like that, and also probably print media, and maybe religious copy before that. But now, but the swag that America has, both its viability in terms of security and labor and capital, but also culture and swag. That's from the African people, but in the first place, it's from Africa and folk music and culture of Africa. Then, as that landed in America, you had ethnogenesis, the birth of the majority people, us here these last 407 years, ostensibly, according to since 1619. That constitutes an ethnogenesis and a cultural genesis, but it's still inherited by, and it's akin to, in parallel, or at least correlated to African folk, is American folk of the work fields. Then couched and transmuted, but also viable in gospel. Then from gospel, you have like jazz, you have doo-wop, bebop, rock and roll, disco, funk, soul, then like techno, then hip hop, rap, G-funk, gangster rap, hip hop again, pop, through all that, imitating all that, gospel, going through different iterations from the folk in the first place, but then overlapping with those other influences. Then even things like alternative, because you would say like, what's some real killer ass alternative thing? Like you turn on like Kurt Cobain, like Nirvana. It has like so many damn near views, how many millions of likes on that song, like Smells Like Teen Spirit or Come As You Are. Kurt Cobain himself, if you listen to the unplugged appearance that he made in the 90s, he actually shouted out Lead Belly, and he covered one of Lead Belly's songs. So you can say Lead Belly was at least an influence of Kurt Cobain. So even your rock, your alternative thing like that, that would seem maybe different than folk and hip hop and rock, the old school rock. That's still the heirloom of like of jazz, bebop, soul, blues. I forgot blues. Blues is pivotal and all that, right? All the way back, probably before jazz is actually blues. Blues is before jazz. So you have folk, gospel, and probably together with that, and occurring together with that would be blues along with the gospel and informing gospel. But then you have even alternative. So all things, all roads lead back to Rome. All music leads back to folk, and it's getting back to folk. But and then also like another rock and roll group would be like and then so you had like funk, like Parliament Funkadelic. I met someone here who's related to members of Parliament Funkadelic, and he said that Parliament was the original act. Like I think George Clinton of renown, he was a doo-wop singer in the first place. This is the inside scoop. George Clinton was a doo-wop singer. I'm a doo-wop connoisseur now, and I love doo-wop. That's probably my favorite genre of music because a lot of music, certain cultures, ethnicities excel maybe differently at different genres, but doo-wop is real. That's the real battlefield of the heart because all's fair in love and war. All's fair in the quartet scene. Anybody from any background that's in love or that got the chops can sing doo-wop, and it goes over like swag. No matter who you are, no matter what you're like, if you can sing doo-wop from the heart, that's good to go. That's rock and roll stuff. So that's how George Clinton started out, and then then I think he was down with Motown. I met another hip hopper head, OG from New York, and he was telling me that Parliament had to do with another Motown act and their influences, but I can't remember who he said it was. But then Parliament, it was its own thing, but it was like a big band with a lot of people, and there was like some lag in them getting paid and them getting on like that. So then they splintered into Funkadelic as a smaller subset, I think, of Parliament, or it could have been the other way around. But I think it was Parliament then Funkadelic, because a lot of people might not know what's the difference between Parliament and Funkadelic. One of my music teachers, he got down with Parliament, but when I called it Funkadelic, he called it Parliament. But that's the inside scoop, is that one of them was like a sect of the other, like similar to a faith. Then George Clinton, he was a pioneer. He had that song Atomic Dog. From Atomic Dog, you had songs like my friend in school, my best friend in high school, his father was either Zapp or Roger from Zapp and Roger, and they had that song Computer Love. So if you ever heard that song Computer Love, that was my best friend's dad. And my best friend, he was a smooth ass dude. Like he stuck up for me when I was getting punked out in school, and then I started rocking with him. And he was a savvy, cool ass, funny ass dude like that in school. But his dad was a real rock and roller, which made him a rock and roller. So my best friend had been a rock and roller in high school. And your formative experiences, like of your salient peer group in high school, that's what a lot of who you are as an adult, because you shared tastes, you shared jokes, you competed together. So a lot of who you are and how you think like your whole life as an adult, it has a lot to do with your main friends in high school like that, because you were still formative, but you're also beginning to be an adult. So that had been my homie like that, the son of Zapp and Roger. But that song Computer Love, that was very influential also. But that's reminiscent and related to George Clinton with Atomic Dog. And then George Clinton also influenced the whole like West Coast hip hop and hip hop at all. But like you're like G-Funk, Snoop Dogg, if you can remember like sipping on gin and juice, and like some of those old Tupac, some of those, like you could be a dancer or a wallflower in a club, but if you play some of those old school, a lot of people wouldn't want to walk outside and act like a gangster. But if you're in a club and that old school Snoop Dogg come on, everybody's gonna be rocking with that shit. You can't help but to bop, to lean back and forth when you hear Snoop Dogg come on. But that actual funk and swag and recipe, that's inherited and by way of George Clinton is clear the influence. And that's what this man, also a Funkadelic, knowing them, said. He said, hell yeah, hip hop had a lot to do with George Clinton. But there were some legal battles that ensued when George Clinton tried to get compensated. But just like most musicians will never get paid half of what they contributed to music and also business and goings on and sexy shit and money changing hands. Also, George Clinton, pound for pound, if you look at how much hip hop is worth, but how much George Clinton is worth to hip hop, he probably never had or never will get compensated for what he was really onto. So what I wanted to say is that with these with the Holy Bible is that I'm trying to make it in a modern context, and so the the uh the the deepest part of the Bible is that God is His Word. That's the deepest takeaway. From there, so but I was talking about Nkulu Nkulu. So in Africa, Nkulu Nkulu is what's called God in for the people of South Africa. But Nkulu Nkulu never had a descendant. So actually, God of South Africa, Nkulu Nkulu, is no longer with us because he died without issue. That means he died without having a child. So too did Jesus. As far as we know, Jesus died. Jesus is still with us. He's still our Lord and Savior. But actually, Jesus doesn't have a descendant. His relatives, the tribe of Judah, would still be here. Because I said there's a promise between God Almighty, the Alpha and Omega, and Abraham. Although God, the Alpha and Almighty, did not have a son except for Jesus by conception of the Holy Spirit and Jesus' mom. But he's still attributed as of the line of Judah. I actually don't know how that works, that he was of Immaculate Conception, but also the line of Judah. I don't actually know how that works. But ostensibly, God the Father himself never had an heir except for by way of spirit. So Jesus was God's spiritual son, but also conceived by spirit, if you accept that by faith, as you accept that by faith. But God himself, even with Jesus being his son, his only begotten, even that far, he still didn't have a line and an heir. So God and his progeny, his family, is no longer with us because that would have ceased with Jesus right there. But so too, Nkulu Nkulu of Africa was like a stand-up man, a good man, the inspiration of this life. But also he had not an heir. So that's an overlap. That's actually that's an interplay overlap between two different faiths from different part of the world. African spirituality of the Zulu people, and also hey, I hope y'all aren't talking about real business, because I'm on the street right here. Y'all talking about
No, sir, turn around.
no, I'm not telling you shut up. I'm just letting you know that it sounds like y'all talking about like some real, like some heavy stuff, and I'm just saying it's
we're
streaming
not
right
talking
here.
heavy stuff.
Cool.
We're talking about what we're talking about, sir.
I don't want you to say nothing wrong on camera. That's all I'm saying.
Your phone is broken and damaged.
It's from the street, baby. It's a street
trash.
phone. You ain't lying, but it still works. So,
don't work.
but I just wanted to protect you to not say something earside of the camera. That's all I'm finna say.
Oh, don't say that they can see us.
Yeah, just don't say anybody's name or your business.
Don't say the name of the business.
No, don't say.
Hey,
Don't say
they
nothing.
can't do nothing with my business.
Don't say nothing. Get you in trouble on camera.
No, that's
I
what
bet,
my
bet,
mom
bet,
said.
bet,
You
bet.
can't do nothing.
Bet,
I
bet.
said 1,000 times on the top of the roof.
Bet.
You can't do nothing with it.
Bet, fair use. I'm just recording. That's all I'm finna say. You ain't gotta change up
You
nothing.
can't do nothing with it.
But what I'm saying is, so.
Look at that phone.
But I've been out here for the last hour though. I wasn't trying to.
You've been out here for hours.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's my jackass. but all I'm saying is so Nkulu Nkulu, he never had a son. But then another overlap is that according no that's street cred, man. That's cracked glass because it didn't drop while I'm making money.
The crack glass looks like boo boo.
But I'm making money with the boo boo. I'll give it anyway. I gotta get it. I get it out the mud, man. I get it out the shit. I'll go in and dab shit and get the money. Say what?
Are you doing lawsuits?
No, I'm doing a Bible study on here. It got me a new that's real life, man. But always be honest, man. Just be honest. Yeah, I'm streaming this shit, man. But another connection is that some people have raised the question in my life, and I've heard the question raised: how are there three God's heads? Because the great author Sir John Woodrow, he was highly educated in England, and then he migrated to India. He became a justice of the High Court of India, but he also transcribed and rendered into fine Oxford level English the sacred solemn principles of the East. That is the understanding of gurus, sages, ascetics, hermits, holy men, religious devout people, and ordinary people with culture and seasoning. And he thought, according to him, according to his own statements, a man does nothing without incentive. So for him to say that he rendered those works without any incentive for either esteem or financial compensation, I can't argue that, although he was so thoroughgoing as to be reminiscent of being a scholar and sage in his own right, but he didn't present himself that way. And his real name was Sir John Woodrow, but he went by the name of Arthur Avalon as a pseudonym, homage, and spiritual a conglomerate guild of all his influences, including those so-called that I referenced and some of his personal friends, that he didn't actually take credit and claim for authorship, and also some of the brilliant poetry that occurs in there. He called it Arthur Avalon as a pseudonym, homonym, and a person bigger than himself, and an understanding bigger than himself, than him being Sir John Woodrow, that too a knight, because he was an ordained knight before he assumed the moniker and pseudonym of Sir John Woodrow. But he said that before he became enlightened and open-minded enough to learn about India faith, because also he's coming from India, from England, which was under the sway of the church, and the church traditionally has been a little bit conservative and, or if not rigid and intolerant of other ideas and faith walks. But he said that he once had a professor, and his professor was talking about India to them, and he was talking about like the idea of deities with like different arms and different implements and different heads, and some of the students were mocking the professor, and he said, okay, but your God also has 3 heads. And a lot of times now they say something similar to that in Christian circles, and they say that anything with more than 1 head is a monster. So how is the Holy Trinity not a monster, and also how is it singular, that is self-possessed and wasteless and deathless and autonomous and sovereign as pure unmitigated power? Because if it was 2 or more, if it was 2, that's a partnership. If it was 3 or more, that's like a conglomerate, guild, panel, parliament, like collective, and there would be the opportunity to vote and or veto, so the Godhead wouldn't have to be the head if it can be if it has to check in with anything. So but I'm saying is that I appreciate that at least you could, in the vein of the Holy Bible, and calling God himself God Almighty, the Alpha and Omega, and the range of that, because also being dynamic is part of being great. It doesn't confound that statement to say that God is God's mind, God's spirit, and God's word. That's actually part of the logos. Now, some people describe the logos, which is also, the logos is another great name that can be synonymous with God. If God is his word, the logos is what words are. Words are a combination of idea and the expression of idea. That's logos. That's also word. That's also God. Jesus is also the fulfillment of the word. So that's also Jesus, and that's by way of the Holy Spirit. That's Bible through that's activated. So the first is the thought of God, his mind, but God didn't do all that was in his mind, because he had thoughts of different things that he did. What he did, he allowed to happen by grace. That is, let there be light. That allowingness, that may be the spirit, but also the will of God. So what is life? Life is from the voice of God, the void of, because your voice is a void until you would enunciate with your will. Then by the will, God, life is sheer exertion, ceaseless motion, sheer will. So God conceived this existence with the potential, because all energy is both potential and kinetic. The potence of the possibility and imminence of a universe is the voice. The strain in the voice, the tension, the stress that makes it intelligible is the will. In India, and then there's also the mind, that because the mind sees something before it manifests. That's the seeing. Your voice, all that you see, all that's on your mind is what comes out your voice. You can't sing cool without feeling and thinking cool. The mind, the voice, that is the mind, the spirit. I'm sorry, the mind, the voice, the spirit, and the will, the action, because the will is graceful, the Holy Spirit. Then in India, you have Kriya, Ika, and Jhana, another trinity. That refers to Kriya is action, will. Jhana is knowledge, mind, and Kriya, action, will, and knowledge. Because in order for you to get onto action, you have to have the will and the knowledge. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you can't use your will right, because you'll spend your will. Because will is limitless, but it's not infallible. You have to be using will appropriately, or you'll spend yourself. And God is eternal, because God is efficient, pure, efficient, is simple efficiency. That is efficient cause of this life, and wasteless and deathless for being wasteless and deathless. That is efficient. So as efficient cause requires knowledge, that is foresight, that is sight too. But then the voice has meaning by way of sight, past, present, and future, omnipresent, omnipotent, as in singular, self-possessed, conserved, and not to associate with any. So also in India, they would say that who and what is great in this life, that is Chidgana, consciousness, greatness, all of life. There's no experience of anything without consciousness, but there's also no consciousness without being attended by matter, which is constitute of energy in the first place, that is will. So you have will and mind together. There's no will without mind or mind without will. But you have that trinity, but it's a dynamic. It's not exactly trinity as in triplicated. So if things go in one, then it goes two, splits apart, that's bifurcated. If it splits into three, that's triplicated. If God is not at a loss for being triplicated, God is dynamic for being triplicated. We're in three-dimensional, we're in a three-dimensional reality. You have at least three dimensions of God. For example, there are buildings here. All the time, creation is constituted of three operations in tandem ceaselessly. You have creation, destruction, and maintenance. For you to build a building, you have to destroy something first. Something had to be destroyed and leveled to then build it. Then while destroying it and while building it, you have to maintain that. Once it's built, you have to yet maintain that. And while maintaining it, you have to sometimes delete it more and build it more. So you always have creation, destruction, and maintenance. That's a triple act mode. Then you also have mind, will, and knowledge. And through all that, you have the operation of the logos. Now, I was saying that to bring this into modern context, so we are inundated with, and we are simply infatuated with these electronic devices, because it actually does seem profound that these things can go through walls, that you can communicate with someone all the way around the world because you're on a phone, right? But according to Grand Sheikh Tashik Bey, who has access to some of that gilded information and has proliferated some of it on YouTube, the actual technology of radio is reverse engineered and not different than the viability and potence of our actual voice. Your voice itself is more potent than your phone. Have you ever been on your phone and somebody comes around, speaking or not, their actually willpower actually affected your phone? Like, you're on the phone, you have low battery or medium battery, and a car come by bumping music, that music actually interrupt your phone because your phone perceives energy. That's real energy. But your living voice, so God is undivided, right? So I want to say also, in Islam, they have an idea called shirk. Shirk is different than the triplication of a principle, because shirk is to make an associate that is a partner of God. That's an offense. That's a blasphemy in Islam, and probably so too Judeo-Christianity if you took it to the full extent and appreciated it. To make a partnership with God is to offend God, because your partner, your affiliate, they can offend you, they can injure you, they can delay you, they can veto you, they can confound you if you're on sharing of business with people. So who and what is great is not to be mocked by being imitated. That's to make the likeness of such. But also, when you associate with someone, you assume familiarity with them. That's also mocking. That's also blasphemy, as the God Almighty is concerned, or according to Scripture, I extrapolate. So to make a partner of God is different than God Himself being dynamic. And I wanted to point that out. But but actually, your voice. So if God is conservative, if God is singular, if God is undivided, God has a voice. We are in the image of God. We also have a voice. We are from God, but at no point did we cease to be that which we are from, because you are what you're from. You are your parents. As much as you don't like your parents, you're still them. You're as much and more than your parents, but you're not your parents. I think that everyone's voice in this life is actually God's voice. Each person's voice is another expression of God's voice in a different mode of living, loving, suffering, contributing to the bigger picture. Everyone's voice is actually God's voice, but also the radio technology is reverse engineered from our human body. So too, the computer apparatus, like a smartphone and computers before that, is reverse engineered from our mind. And through all that, the viability, the potency, the vitality of our voice, of our life force, of, for lack of a better word, libido, our procreative potential and potency, our health of mind, our self-esteem, our confidence, our happiness, our communication and charisma that makes different things viable, including cooperation and the expression of power, and organizing politically to protect interests and enjoy life on earth. All of that is by means of the voice, and all of that is a different polarity charge, because all of life is polarity, and also that can be appreciated and it's understood in the highest terms in terms of electricity. Medicine is understood in terms of electricity, charges, protons, neutrons, electrons in the simplest form. Military apparatus, according to Tashik Bey, also is appreciated in terms of charges. That is neutralizing targets, bolstering targets, and destroying targets is appreciated in electrical terms like a grid work. And also our societies are designed as an extrapolation and byproduct of military infrastructure and communication such as the World Wide Web, and even I imagine our cities, even like our infrastructure, the state highway system in America, the interstate, that's a military apparatus, but that's also a reminiscent of charging and neutralizing things and making things active, and can be appreciated in electrical terms like a grid like that, because it's very grid-like. Medicine is taught grid-like in terms of system. The human body can be perceived in grid-like in terms of systems, although I think that can be arbitrary because it's limiting and divisive when there's no actual true hard stops in nature. So the body's more seamless, both in terms of physically and in terms of an energy field, I think, than what's taught in the medical books. And then military is understood like that. And then all the things that we do in medicine, military, and even business and life, all the things we mostly do are not entirely independent of implications of chemistry and physics, which can both be understood in terms of chemistry and physics. Physics can be understood in terms of chemistry, and chemistry can be understood in terms of physics, because the positions and the relationships of the molecules are very significant. So like when you see those pictures of sophisticated organic chemistry is more sophisticated than man-made chemistry. That's natural chemistry of organic, living, carbon-based forms, life forms based on carbon. There's actually the structure of those molecules is very significant in how they exist and operate and interact and come together and stay together and come apart. And also an example of that is that our body and living bodies require water. The reason they require water is not because water is a nutrient in itself. Water is an environment in itself. It's actual opportunity for the body to do what it needs to do. But the actual so chemical bonds have polar and covalent bonds, and they're staying together, their stableness together, and they're breaking apart are part of the value, but also so the shortcoming and propensity of what chemical reactions are and can do and what they mean. But you have at least two forms of chemical reactions also in dating and romance. Similarly, you have a similar dynamic in terms of attraction, because all of life is actually connected, and all disciplines and subjects are truly fundamentally connected if life is. And so so a lot of people would say STEM versus humanities or art, but actually a lot of art, if you're honest, it has to do with love and tragedy in the most convincing and poetic of terms. Like love is about art is about love and tragedy, finding and losing love and keeping love and paying for love. But love is about chemistry when it's working well. That is when it's smooth and reciprocal. And actually the properties of attraction and human relationships, and probably relationships of other creatures, is still not different than chemistry, because it's constituted as chemistry, and it's a broader macrocosm of the fundamental microcosm of what goes on with chemistry at a lot of levels. But an example of that is that if you're dating someone or you're spending time with someone and you're attracted just for the sake of being attracted to it, that'd be like a relationship of what you call friends with benefits, is that you're attracted to each other whether you're having physical relations or not, but you're attracted for the sake of being attracted together. That's you just have a mutual attraction. That's a polar bond that water has something of. But then you have a covalent bond where something is being shared. So like you're more so polarly bonded to your friends and people that you like being around, but you can easily disassociate from, and you're covalently bonded to your family because you share a name, a history, likeness, different degrees of financial assets, different connections. You're more so sharing of things with your family. So if you had a friend in your life and you're just spending time together, that's like a polar bond. If they come all the way to where you live and they leave a toothbrush behind, and now you're in possession of something that's also their possession, that's like a covalent bond. And water has the right degree of those, that it makes the operations of the body and the carbon processes that constitute organic life upon Earth viable and possible. So a lot of times when they're appreciating is life viable in outer space, it has to do with are there water supplies and also the right temperatures for the processes of carbon as we know it to sustain carbon-based life forms. With all that we know that is carbon, generally speaking, is constituting carbon. However, Arthur Avalon would beg to differ that all matter whatsoever is constituted of a degree of sentience, and it's to different degrees, conscious, unconscious, and subconscious, as can be proved in metals, in pine cones, in organic, and the whole range of matter is that is energy is all. If all matter is can be appreciated in terms of atoms and electrons and protons, that at the fundamental level is energy. Life is constant, is viable by way of energy. All energy is conscious to different degrees in its expression and iteration and niche lane purposes and mode, whether that be a human being, a creature, an insect, an animal, a mo- insect, bacteria, virus. The most fundamental of all those and unifying all those would be fungus, according to one person that I met, a nondescript person that had a deep job that he couldn't explain to me, but without being a conflict of interest. But he told me a lot of things about the area I was in and about life, and he said that fundamentally life is understood to be by way of fungus, and when they take the fungus on Earth and they suspend it in space to test it in space, it's actually familiar with space, and it responds naturally in space, such as to think that the fungus predates the Earth itself. So the Earth itself, prior to plants, prior to animals, I'm not sure water, but prior to the Earth, animals, plants, reptiles, fish, bacteria, virus, throughout all that. And I think actually the beginning of the food chain may still be actually fungus. But according to this person I met, fungus is the main thing you can point to in this universe as being the beginning and middle and end of anything. Fungus is significant all the way up and down the food chain, I think, and maybe all the way up and down the constitution of this universe and its physical mode and expression of reality. If a person could understand what fungus is, both in literal terms, but maybe in terms of energy also. But what I'm saying is that, according to Arthur Avalon, before Tashriq Bey had said that the radio communication is an extrapolation and reverse engineering of our human voice. According to Arthur Avalon, in the footnotes of one of his books, I think the Serpent Power, referring to Kundalini, all of the vitality of the universe, all of it, including our very solar sun and the electricity that's extrapolated from our sun and the work that can be done with it and the energy that is absorbed in plants and the earth by way of plants and creatures, the sun, fossil fuels come from the sun in the first place. That's all of the logos, and that's also where electricity comes from. You can't do any electricity without implications of the sun or creatures that have or creatures and or material that has been impacted by eons of being under the sun. And the sun is the closest thing we can appreciate as an effigy or image of sheer willpower, of beauty, of light, of a voice. The sun gives voice to anyone and all things, even people that can't talk. But according to Arthur Avalon, actually what we have for electricity, what we know of as electricity, is actually a function and mode of the great logos, that is God. God, I'm saying in here, God can be called logos without offending or affronting the nature of the meaning of God as so called described in the Holy Bible, as in his word, his mind, and his spirit. That is idea and the expression of idea, which is action. Idea and action realized. That's our voice in this life, which includes action, because actions speak louder than words. But anything you do, your whole body is unified. So anything you do goes through your voice, whether you're talking or not, whether you can talk or not. Anything you think, do, say, and are impacts your voice, and it can be heard in your voice. Because in people's voice, you can hear a lot of their real story that can't be falsified, because that's actually what you've experienced and what you've done. So what you've done is in your voice. Hey man, what the hell were you guys up to? Nothing. Whatever the hell you are and are doing is exactly in your voice, and that's not falsifiable, because it's truly congruent and reciprocal with your vibration and your standpoint in this life and your goings on. But according to Arthur Avalon in the Serpent Power, the logos is the great author of life and the truest source of energy, and the understanding of its operations is how electricity is understood and wrought. But what's significant about that is that he didn't explain that. I'll say he didn't explain that well in his book. He said something unique. He said that the logos, the great force of the logos, which he didn't explain what the logos was in and of itself. I had to go to other sources to appreciate that the logos is thought and verbal form. But the logos, because this universe is not actually a physical designated reality. It's energy, but finer than that, it's actually transcendent. You can't point to and lay a finger on what is unchanging and permanent about this universe, other than the idea or potential for this universe, which is also God and God's word, so realized, imminent, and expressed. But what I was saying in another video is that according to India, any letter that exists, like you have 26 letters in the English alphabet and 51 in the Sanskrit. Anything to be viable to move, it needs something to stay static. So cars move by means of the static earth. Your body and its processes, organic processes, move by way of the stability. All of the things you do with your body physically are routed by and viable because of your core. If you ever injure your back, you can't do shit. You can't even stand up out of a chair if you hurt your back. You cannot do anything physically if you hurt your back bad enough. Now, I think that your core, so all things are balanced. You have like a front and back of things. A lot of people would say your core is your stomach, but it's as much, if not more, your back is your core. But that's on a physical level in terms of your muscles, ligaments, joints, and tendons, and and probably skin too, flesh, and all your systems. They're viable by means of your skeletal system, and you have motility. You have to move to be alive by means of the different pulley systems, because nothing in this life actually goes anywhere. There's just attraction and repulsion. So your body is a complex system of levers that either are concentric or eccentric. I think eccentric. Concentric means it pulls in, and then like expansive, eccentric means it goes out. When someone's running, it's a sophisticated combination of pulling of concentric and eccentric motions, that is attraction and repulsion. But according to according to India, so you have to have something static for something to move. For you to express yourself, your sounds don't have meaning without vowels. Vowels are the active, potent, moving force of sound, and you actually can't enunciate a consonant without a vowel. And I think you may not be able to enunciate a vowel without a consonant. The most fundamental vowels are 2, and the most fundamental consonant are 1. It is A-U-M, with the monks chant. All of our sounds are an extrapolation and sophisticated ripple or effect of the sounds A-U-M, but upon that, to our ear, sounds have meaning by the contrast of consonants and vowels. But any letter, anything to be a consonant needs the contrast of a vowel to have meaning. A vowel needs to be enunciated from the standpoint of a consonant to be sounded. But thereby, each letter in the alphabet contains all the other alphabets in it, imminent. So for anything to be expressed, the viability, the sound of that being expressed, it only has meaning by way of all the other things that are not being expressed, but that are potent and possible. The entire reservoir of letters is the potence for sound, as we can transcribe that. But the potence of all of them is what actually activates and substantiates and makes viable any nuanced particular sound. It has meaning with regard to all else that's possible. If I'm a badass person, I'm a badass with reference to other badasses and other non-badasses. That's what makes me seem like a badass. If I'm a pushover, I am a pushover with reference to similarity to other pushovers and difference from people that are non-pushovers. But that too, any sound contains all other sounds in it. That's why you have the over and undertone series of harmony. So when you play a sound, like a singular sound is called unison. If you play the letter C on a keyboard, if you were to look at that, the audio of that, C is not just C. You have a lot of other notes in that C that are over and undertones that you can't directly hear them. C is the most prominent of which that stands out. But a lot of other sounds are going on because you can't make a pure sound without the other sounds being somehow attended. More and less manifest, but to different degrees to make there be. So C is the characteristic of the note C, but there is no note C. There's only and is all sounds, and to different degrees iterated in the manifestation of any particular sound. For you to make a particular sound, it requires you to be unique, that is idiosyncratic. So all of our voice is an idiosyncratic expression and appearance of all sound that is possible. Otherwise, our idiosyncrasy would have no meaning and no intelligibility. So I think that all of life is stress with it, action that is stress, energy, which energy is viable by means of the releasing. Energy is more so release. Energy is not creative. Energy is possible, but it's released by means of friction, effort, and friction. Makes stress life is full of stress. We understand things by way of stress. Sounds have meaning because they are stresses. But I think that any sound contains, any manifest sound contains all sounds latent and imminent. Thereby, any voice is that of the only voice that's possible, which is actually all sounds that are possible in a unique iteration based on the spirit, the soul, the testimony of one particular person being, and all of the living and dying suffering that makes that person possible. Sometimes you don't think about how much living, dying, suffering it took just to have you there, buddy. All your ancestors, all they had to do, all they had to risk, all they had to love, all they had to sacrifice for the next generation, for you to exist as you. Then all the animals that had to sacrifice for you in this life, all the people that did different services in this life, all the things that you did for yourself, but you couldn't have done without other people's support and training and on like that. So there's so much that goes into any person or any being, but such that you are all people, the inheritance of all people, and what you do of value goes back to all people, which you also are. And so I think that's what life is. That's what the voice is that there is one truth. If there is one God, and God is his word, and God is the Alpha, Omega, and all things in between, we as his children, though not directly, are also him and also his voice, at least inspired by and a function of that. Because if he sees the efficient cause, all things in a manner of calculus are a ripple and extension and a consequence of the original cause, that is the thesis, that is the emanation. And that is, according to the older books of the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and God was the Word. And God created the heavens and the earth by means of his voice, because he spoke it. But the potential for his voice is a potential for all sound. Sound is synonymous with energy. You cannot create or destroy energy, neither can you create or destroy sound. You can only reveal energy in sound. Similarly, you cannot create God. You could almost say you cannot create a universe. You can reveal a universe. You can reveal the opportunity for choosing, loving, dying, suffering, making choices. The meaning of those choices is the only thing real. The only thing that's actually real about life, that is permanent and unchanging and at least of arbitrary, that's actually really real, is meaning. So if you have a like a mental health professional, they say, hey man, are you in touch with reality? If you're defining reality for someone, you're arbitrary, because that's not their experience necessarily. So you're overlaying your experience and giving them meaning by means of your experience. You're fashioning meaning for them. That's falsified meaning. But their own true meaning, including them have to deal with your bullshit, that's what's real in this life. So the meaning of our life is what we do. I'm not a sir, I don't exist, ma'am. So all of that's California for you, man. California sucks in that way. But all of I'm talking about this righteous stuff, the Holy Bible. Listen, hey man, why don't you go to hell with your fucking Bible, man? That's what people gotta say. But if I had a bunch of money, man, hey man, this is how you make money. And this is my friend Jeff Bezos. She probably get down on all fours and prostrate and worship to me, because Mount California is a money worshiping, money grunting son of a gun like that. California, no less. Yeah, still segregated like this, but in terms of not skin tone, in terms of money, baby. What is your broke ass doing in front of this shit? I paid for the right to be here. We should have known my accommodation is right the hell there. And it's bullshit there. It's bullshit there. It's bullshit at the accommodation. It's bullshit in the comments. You can't even go somewhere and talk about the fucking Bible in California. No less. That's in America. No less. Soon thereafter, because as California goes, so goes America. Goes the world. Welcome to America, rock and roll, baby. It's expensive, baby. I hope you can afford to in inflation, baby. It's very mean-spirited sometimes, baby. Here go this jackass right here talking this righteous shit. Why don't he go straight to hell with that righteous shit? Then you hear them talking that other bullshit. Hey, man, I just want to know, I got the camera rolling, so don't say the wrong stupid shit on camera. Hey, man, fuck you too. I say whatever I want. Goddamn. I can't be honest. I can't be righteous. I can't be shit. California, man. Then she's also saying your phone look like shit. You can't be shit too. But what's significant is that all of life, I think, is ceaseless energy in motion according to the will of God, according to the testimony. What she's more so mad about is my voice. I'm expressing my voice, but I don't have enough of stature and I don't have enough of the auspices and the blessings of other people and the money to express my voice with confidence, because that would start to sound too much like God. You didn't pay enough to have a voice, because there's only one in this voice, the beginning of this earth, who also made you in his likeness, but you didn't work hard enough or pay enough money to sound like enough of yourself there, mister. Why you need to go to hell, mister? That's what she said right there. So people don't have a problem with you chit chat. I could chit chat there forever. Nobody cares. But then I'm speaking in my story, in my truth, it made the woman mad like that. So that's actually power. You're not having power unless you ruffle a few feathers. So this is traction here. And you're also not having power unless people detest you. So there go the very viewership detesting this shit. But I'm still saying it for the record of YouTube and the ethers and the classic records. So here I go. Um, so all of life, you could say that all of life is vibration. For you to have an experience of life, we don't actually experience life directly, but we perceive life through our senses. Our senses are our senses perceive different range of vibration. The fastest of which is light. Of the light, we see colors at different, but then the colors we see are different range of vibration. You have infrared to ultraviolet is the spectrum of light. Then slower than that, you have ear sound, because light is at the speed of light. So we're damn near, for you to see something, you have to be something. For your eyes to actually perceive light, your eyes are registering about as fast as light. So when a child look up to you like that, or a person with impressionable eyes look up to you, their eyes are vibrating as fast as the speed of light to see light, but then as fast as whatever you are truly saying and being on top of the light. So if something's going the speed of light and then you flash light on top of that, is that now going faster than the speed of light? If we're existing at the speed of light to see each other upon light, and then you're also acting upon that, are you not acting faster than the speed of light? That's how fast your eyes are, these pretty brown eyes. That's how fast the pretty brown eyes are vibrating. Then sound is slower than that. It's like the speed of sound, Mach, like that's like 600. Light is like 180 something thousand miles per second. The speed of sound is 680 miles per hour. And it can be breached by man-made implements bearing humans, breaking the sound barrier. That's then within sound, you have a different range of sound of hertz and decibels. The higher it goes, the faster it goes, the high pitch it goes. The slower it goes, the low pitch it goes. In terms of, I think decibels is the loudness, and then hertz is the tenor of it, or the tone of it, in terms of high pitch and deepness. Then you have smell. I'm not sure actually where smell wavers in between sight and hearing. That too, I'm not sure taste, but I would imagine smell is slower than sound, and I would imagine that taste is slower than smell, and then touch is probably the slowest. Although in terms of consciousness, slow touch might be peeing back and forth, because when you touch someone, you really commune with something. Like, I want to hold your hand. When you hold, and I want to say for the record, homeless people are the most traumatized, triggered, and victimized people. So what that woman did for me, knowing I'm on camera, that's actually the story of my life, day in and day out. And that's what happens when you have turbulence in a household or in a job, is that you're in places like this. Right now, I'm not outside of an accommodation, although that kind of same thing could happen to me in my accommodation. I can be right back on the street. You have a deprivation on top of that. Then when you have services, the services are about as mean as that, but that's actually what it is to be on the street. That actually what you saw there, the actual disrespect of that, because she could have kept her damn mouth straight and kept her mouth to herself and gone about her business, and I wouldn't have stopped her from doing things. She wouldn't have stopped me from offending me. But she had to say that to me, because that's what it's about, is that when you're on the edge, you're an easy target. You saw how disrespectful the first person was. I actually warned her that they're talking about shit that sounded like criminal activity to my taste. So I'm saying, hey man, it's a camera rolling right here. Don't say anything you wouldn't be proud of in front of any and everyone, including them people if they watch the camera. Hey man, fuck you, your phone looks like shit. That's because you're an easy target. The more honest you are, the more humane you are, the more peaceful you are, the more of an easy target you are, the more you're a victim are. Such as case in point, Jesus Christ and what happened to him, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, on and like that. The more you actually be a humane, kind person, the more of that ratchet, horrible shit happens to you. But if you're on the street, it's daily and it's tough work like that. It's learning though. So all of life is energy, and that's the same thing as sound. That's the same thing as the voice of God. That's the same thing as the logos. But there's an actual there are solemn dynamics to it, because the properties of energy, like audio, there are actually principles of it, and it can be done well or not, and it can be understood in scientific terms. Sound can, audio, but so can energy, and all of that can be harnessed as electricity. That is the logos. So what I'm saying is that a creature. So God said. So what was the first thing that God did? God revealed light. He created a universe, but he revealed light. The universe wouldn't have meaning because it couldn't be perceived without light, that is vibration and sound. Sound and light actually overlap and are the same thing, but so do mind and matter, and light and sound all overlap. That's different range and grades of the same thing. That's the dynamics and the potential for vibration and touching heterogeneity and homogeneity together. When you're singing, you're sounding different from one another. That gives you harmony, but also you're blending. The going in and out of sounding the same, unison, and different contrast gives you assonance, dissonance, and consonance, which all can be understood and wrought and presented as harmony. But then also uh, um, but what we can appreciate in terms of energy and working with energy, like in terms of chemical bonds, and then the physics of that, which is as important as the energy. The physics is by whereby the energy is channeled by means of the physical arrangements, the actual structures of the molecules and their angles and things like that. The actual angles of atoms, proton angles are the most important thing in life. I talked to this deep person on the train, like just like you would say 360 degrees of knowledge in the highest degree of understanding. That's also angles. Buildings are made by way of angles. All things, what you can do with your body is possible by way of angles. How you maim yourself or not. What I can see with through my glasses, or had I not have glasses, are also by means of angles. The molecules exist at angles, and then so according to Arthur Avalon, so too does electricity have properties of angles. So too does the very logos. So animals that exist at night. So God allowed there to be light. Our local light is the solar. We're in a solar system. Our light is the sun, but the sun, our bodies must abide by the goings on of the earth, the weather that is the polarity of earth, the positive and negative charges of the earth, also akin to electricity, and also akin to our body, and that our body is also polar. The different, like our right brain goes to our left side, our left brain goes to our right side, and there's something called Ida and Pingala. That's the name of those two different lines as it goes from right to left and left to right, and they also correspond and harmonize with the moon, and also with your creative and logical potential, and it actually varies. So you could say that your ability to sing well and also think well in logical terms, it may vary with the time of day and the time of month and the time of year and the season, according to Eastern thought, Ayurvedic, in terms of Ida and Pingala, the name for those two different lines of the nervous system, like that, in the mind, and the polarity of that, and also the balance of that, and the dynamics of that, which is duplex at least, and corresponding with the moon and its modes. But then too, the human body must abide with the sun and the earth and its satellite, the moon, which abide with the sun, with among the planets, and that too abiding around the sun. But some people say that there's actually another moon to the earth. According to Tashrik Bey, the earth has at least another moon, one other moon that it's not perceivable at the regular angles. And then other people say that our solar system has another planet that would have to be there in order for the mathematics of the actual the attitudes and the aspects of the planets and their trajectory in terms of astronomy and astrology. For that to be possible mathematically, there'd have to be other bodies present that we don't perceive, and that'd be what's called like Planet X. There's other names for that planet, but I think it's called Planet X. Then there may also be another sun, because no things are really singular. You have two brains, two eyes, two noses, two sets of teeth, two modes, polarities of your heart, two intestines, large and small intestine, 2 feet, 2 kidneys, 2 reproductive organs, and all like that. Then according to Arthur Avalon. And then I think that what we don't perceive of two, like say your heart, I think that it has at least 2 modes, and I think we may actually have organs that we can't perceive in that. Light has meaning by contrast of what's less pure than light, which is why light has meaning based on its contrast with what's less pure than it. But there are ranges of your body that you can't see in terms of your aura, your expression, your demeanor, your attitude, your state of mind. But also, you on a fundamental level are a energy field, because even your body, your physical body that you can see, your skeletal system and your organs, including your blood system, your blood itself, and your skin system, and all the organs within they actually are their tissue. Before that, their organic chemistry molecules. Before that, their energy. In terms of charges, polarity, atoms, protons, and neutrons, and then maybe the behavior of that is what you'd call quantum, but that's all still an actual dynamic energy range field, even that which you see. And I think that we're actually interdimensional beings in the fact that when you walk somewhere, you're going through dimensions. When someone's 100 yards away, they look like they're way back there. When they get all the way here, Nothing about them really changed except the energy they expended. The role didn't change, but now they're in front of my face. They actually just went through a dimension in simple terms like that. But so true, I think that we exist as a wavelength, and what comes into us of our physical body that we can see and work with is that which manifests and transcends into the current dimension, such that how do you actually lose weight? When you work out and lose weight, how do you lose weight? They would say that the way you actually lose fat off your body is that it comes out in your breath, but there's actually no hard stop between anything. You are your spirit, your breath. You are actually without and within. So the air outside of you is also what's inside of you, because there's no hard stopping that. So if you're doing all this breathing and you're here now, you do all this breathing, you look different. You actually just went through a dimension because the fat didn't actually come off of you if you didn't have an operation. Nobody took the fat off of you. You didn't actually excrete the fat in terms of your daily business, other than breathing. But life, the spirit is synonymous with breath. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So by way of our breathing, you have to breathe well to exercise well. By way of how we manage our breathing and our health, which is constituted in different ranges of breathing. Every different mode of the body, every strength and deficit and calamity and pathology of the body is attendant of and a function of different degrees of breathing that would be appreciated in yoga. And the breathing is prior to the actual thought process, the decision, the lifestyle, and the occurrence in the body, the process in the body that would give rise and foothold to disease, ostensibly. But so you are a energy field, which I think more of it cannot be seen than what can be seen. But then also, if you think about how much food you eat a hell of a lot of food in a day. If you look at about how much food you eat in your whole life, it's probably more than a dinosaur would. We actually are walking, talking dinosaurs, though we may not know it. We don't look like dinosaurs. We're smaller of stature, but we actually process that much food in our whole life. How many Happy Meals did you have in your whole life? How much bullshit? How much good shit? How much healthy shit? How much candy? How much pop? How much chips? How much did you ingest in your whole body? Should you not look about as big as a dinosaur right now? Should you not look like a redwood? Should you not be able to stand up past the atmosphere? You actually really should. But are you mean to tell me that all of that food got processed through your daily bowel movements? All that food, your bowel movements, your daily business was able to handle that much you ingested? I beg to differ. You are broader as an energy field than what you can see, and your energy field may be bigger and broader than what you can see. That which actually comes into physical corporal experience that you can see and perceive and can be perceived by scientists is less than what you totally are. Another example of that, some people pay homage to the idea of Padma. Another word for Padma is chakra. The chakras of the body, the centers of consciousness, at least 7 of which. But scientists would say, materialist scientists, even though they study science and science can be understood in terms of energy, they still are materialists in that, where are the chakras when they dissected a cadaver? Where had the chakras been? According to Arthur Avalon, the chakras don't exist in a pure physical sense as we understand them, but they correspond with the physical body when it's viable, when it's invigorated. That is when it's living. That's when it's corresponding with the logos. So the logos is the will and the current of life, God, that acts upon the body in different ways at different centers of consciousness. The different Padma chakras of the body, the highest, the crown chakra, all the way to the base Muladhara chakra, the throat chakra, I think that starts with V, the heart, which is also chakra. The way that you can feel something in your heart, that you can speak from your heart, or you can think with your gut, or you can have a brilliant idea in your mind, or you can express it with yourself in the voice. That's because these parts of your body, your actual physical body, and the energy that the physical part is a lesser degree of, it's acted upon by the current of life, the vitality of life, the will of life. Another example of that is money, right? We all know money is bullshit, right? Money is this fake paper shit, right? Before that, you have gold. Gold is actually real currency, because currency, like the logos, has to do with current, electric induction. Current also has to do with electricity. Money, real true money, precious gold, silver, and copper, as understood to the alchemists of old, where I think we get our science from, and it was the segue in launching point from the restrictions of the church into the modern science age, where science is championed and tolerated. The alchemists were the way through that. The alchemists were to make something from nothing and nothing back to something. That is alchemy. But alchemy also dealt with currency and precious metals copper, gold, and silver, and they have electric properties. Those electric properties are there corresponding with the local planetary bodies and with the life force current itself. So gold, copper, and silver, it does have real it does have real reciprocity with your opportunities for fortune and misfortune. All things are cyclical, including your health, including your fortune, and your standpoint to experience fortune and misfortune. Because all the emotions of this universe are cyclical, including whatever you do to draw a livelihood or be blessed from someone else's livelihood. But the way that the life force interacts with the Padmas, lesser known and appropriated as chakras, is actually a technical and at certain angles, as are the motions of energy in terms, as we understand, in terms of atoms and electrons. And anything that we would do with a stable form of energy would be matter in material form, that is gas, solid, or liquid. What we can do with gas, solid, and liquid that gives us both in terms of us as an organic carbon-based being prior to technology, and what we can do with our mind in our inheritance to reason as human beings, carbon-based in the first place, but then man-made on top of that, is by way of the physical dynamics of the energy valence, wavelengths, the sublimating of energy, and the contentment of energy and the discontentment of energy and its motions. They are somewhat arbitrary, capricious, such as the concept of quantum, but they're also exactly reciprocal to cause and effect, balanced, tempered, and thereby have dynamics that can be anticipated and appreciated enough that we can do things intentionally with our understanding of chemistry. But the actual angles of the position of the energy, the actual, so you don't actually have anything that exists physically permanently, but the motions of the energy, the tendency of the energy, the current of the energy. Better than say atom, molecule, and neutron is actually currents. In a proton is a positive current of energy, and an electron is a negative current of energy, and a neutron is a neutral current of energy. That's the only thing that they have that you could measure in terms of mass and inertia. Because if nothing actually has any pure physical permanent substance, that is, it can't be sublimated by introducing or taking energy away from it if it can't be changed. The most fundamental units that we have in a non-physical reality that comes from something's voice called logos, God, God, all due respect. There's nothing actually physical, truly corporal, like physical punishment is called corporal punishment. There's nothing completely, really, truly tangible and physical about that. The only thing that could be appreciated as having meaning is that it's a current and a tendency and a motion, and the angles matter in that. So I'm saying that that's what's stated in Arthur Avalon, is that what we have for electricity is the life force, that is the will, the voice, intention of God, what God allows, but there is abiding within that. So human beings and animals must abide with the earth and the earth's opportunities for weather, and also for hunting and agriculture. That must abide with the seasons, the Earth's polarity, and the Earth's position in space with respect to the other local planetary bodies, the sun, and the solar system's position in the broader system of space. The solar system is within a broader thing all the way up to the Milky Way. The Milky Way is nothing, so there's nothing that's out of order in the universe. It's a combination of chaos and order. Life wouldn't be viable with too much of sameness and or too much of difference. Life wouldn't be viable with too much of chaos and too much of order. So more chaos leads to